Hello, everyone, and welcome to In the Hot Seat. For our repeat viewers, thank you so much for joining us and coming back. And for those new to the show, we look forward to seeing you again, but want to let you know that every 2 weeks, we put industry experts and or customers in the hot seat for a lively discussion, sometimes a debate, and sometimes we even have some discourse as we humanize the digital experience. All aspects of the customer lifecycle are up for discussion, as well as the technologies used throughout the customer journey. Michael, we do a lot on this show.
Well, we do actually, and I'm excited about this discussion today because, as you know, I've been on the warpath about sellers don't sell the way buyers buy for like 15 years now, and it's just gotten worse. I was pulling some stats for us to use for our little banter points here before we bring our guest on, which, like I said, it's going to be an exciting conversation. But I hadn't actually looked at last year's kind of projections about what, or reports about what quota attainment looked like. And it's gotten even worse than what I thought, right? I mean, I was looking at one report that said attainment rates last year were like in the low 40s. Some people were reporting like, one report said 70% of B2B sales reps miss quota. There was another one that from QuotaPath that said 91% missed their quota expectations in 2024. A Salesforce state of sales report said only 28% believe their team would hit 100% of their quota. So, I mean, abysmal rates.
And there's a lot of factors with that, right? But I do believe that, and what we're going to talk about today, and understanding how sales has changed and how the salesperson has to change, you still have that, unfortunately, I think a large percentage of sales professionals who still go about their daily business as though they're selling back in the early 2000s. Right. And that is not at all how the buyer behaves today.
No,
we don't even want them in the cycle.
No,
right?
No. I mean, the stat from one of my survey studies I did a few years ago, and G2 actually repeats that every year now. And it was something like 68% of the people that I surveyed said that they wanted the sales rep to contact them after they had decided what they were going to buy. That's kind of a problem.
Exactly.
No, I mean, and it's you're right. I think the misalignment of, we sell the way we sell, and sales tech, actually, you could argue the same point, right? Sales tech has done nothing but build tools for the most part, build tools that make people do the thing they've been doing faster or more. So if 100 cold calls don't work, let's do 1,000 because we can now use AI to do that. Awesome. Except if you don't even know anything about the customer, you kind of a problem, right?
Well, we have two pretty seasoned individuals, I think, that I'm looking forward to getting into this topic and hearing. They're doing some pretty interesting things. Should we bring them onto the stage?
Yeah. Let's do that.
And one is one of our very own co-hosts, Pete Smith. We're putting you in the hot seat to get the side of sales, and Dr. Stephanie Boyer. Michael, I'll let you do the introductions, then we can dive in.
I'm the one in the blue shirt.
People were very confused. I know, Pete. And by the way, we call this flip the mic, so we get to be extra mean to you. I just wanted you to know that up front. So anyway, Stephanie, great to have you. So Stephanie's a professor at Bryant University, award-winning sales researcher, co-founder of, how do you say that? Remarks? RNMKRS. Wow, there's a lot of letters. AI sales training platform with over 1 million role plays, given 2 TED Talks, authored books, including upcoming AI in Sales and Social Selling, directs Bryant Sales Institute, Hawk Sales Lab. You're busy. She leads the Northeast Intercollegiate, I can say this, NISC, right? Northeast Intercollegiate Sales Competition, one of the largest talent showcases in the country. So welcome, Stephanie.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm really happy to be here today with y'all.
Every time we bring on guests and we go through their bios, I sit there and go, I really have to do more in my life. I mean, that's amazing bio. Pete, you too. Amazing bio.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
But Michael, you mentioned NISC, and I'm going to spell that out for those who may not know what NISC is, and then I'm going to never say it again, and I'll just refer to it in the acronym. But Stephanie, let's start with the Northeast Intercollegiate Sales Competition, NISC. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Those who have never heard of it, what is it, and why is it such a big deal?
Well, it's like a showcase of sales talent. So when I started teaching at Bryant University, I'm a learning researcher. I've been studying how salespeople learn for 23 years. And if you're going to learn how to sell, you have to practice actually selling, right? You have to practice and refine and get good at it. So I created this event to get students motivated because they would have to showcase their ability to sell in front of panels of judges, right? So they're really going to be put to the test. And when you have to showcase your skills on video and in a panel filled with a bunch of judges, kind of like you're on The Voice and they want to see, do you have the talent or not? Then that is actually going to make people even more motivated to go practice selling skills, which is what you need to do if you want to get good at it. So in order to get them to practice, we started this event. I think in 2010 in my classes, I just hosted a sales competition. And we were getting so many people reaching out that they wanted to be a part of it from other schools that in 2012, we actually opened it up. So we made it official 2012. And I think it started with 3 schools, supposed to be 10. That was when Hurricane Sandy came in and, turned our worlds upside down. And so NISC is an opportunity for university students to come to our university at Bryant and participate in this elimination style tournament. So there's 4 rounds of competition where students would come into a room and they would have a conversation with the buyer based on the case from Pete and SpotLogic. They're selling this tool. And so they're selling this platform in order to move up the food chain. So imagine you're coming into the organization and you're trying to build up a champion to get buy-in and have them help you get the next meeting. And you keep going up. And every time they go up, another set of students gets eliminated. So there's 15 rooms of competition that are all happening at the same time. Everyone has a buyer, the student is a seller, and there's a panel of usually 4 or 6 expert judges in every single room. Their judges give them feedback at the end. So a student has 10 minutes to have this conversation. The judges give them some feedback. What's happening there is you're kind of seeing how they're being coached and how coachable they are. And then the student leaves and then the next set of students comes in. But it's super intense because we have cameras in the rooms, we have microphones in the rooms. And as the students are about to go in the room, there's a giant red recording light that pops on. And then usually it's me, but it could be someone else from our team. And we say, 3, 2, 1, knock. And so everybody knocks at the same time. And you can see everybody in all these 15 rooms around. And it's like everyone's about to have a panic attack when it's happening. But you're seeing what's happening under pressure in these rooms. And so we'll start out with, the 15 rooms, and we might have, 200 or more students competing. We'll take the top 6 in each room. And then the next morning, those 90 students compete. And then we take the top students again and then basically just the final 5 or 6 students. And that's a live competition in front of everybody. So everybody's watching it as it's happening. Nice. I mean, talk about performing under pressure there. And
like the Hunger Games as opposed to The Voice.
It's like
that's what I was thinking, but
eliminated left and right.
That's amazing. I mean, the fact that, first of all, the fact that you were able to create this event and have so many people interested speaks volumes. So congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, it's my colleagues that are out there, right? Like they are taking their students and they're introducing them to the concept to come. They're preparing the students. They're, coaching them. Our sponsor typically comes in and teaches them some basic skills just in case they don't have a coach that is familiar with how all this works. And then they actually take the time to bring them here on a Friday and a Saturday. They're giving up their time. So that coach is so important to actually care to bring their students in, to get them motivated as well. And so last year we had 34 universities that came to the event over mostly the United States, but we also had 2 schools from Canada that joined us. So it's a huge competition. And we have like a speed selling event too, where they say why someone should hire them. And we usually have 230 or 250 students that are competing in that. And there's a little career fair and networking event. And we even have skill building sessions where students can come in and they can learn different skills of, how to ask better, confirmation questions, or, thinking about the process, or how to negotiate better. So many different ways to compete, to learn, to network, and just get your students really excited about sales careers.
I mean, with that many students coming through and the years that you've been doing this, I'm sure you have some great stories. So I was just curious, is there something you could share, from maybe one of the students that really kind of stuck with you from one of the competitions?
What I always love is, nobody knows what it's going to really be like until they get there. And, and it happens to so many students where they start talking to one of the employers that's there, and they're like, they want to interview me. Like it's a surprise that someone wants to talk to them. And I'm like, I know you're really good at selling. And they're like, am I? It's like all of a sudden they discover that they have this skill, because usually when they come in, they think of a salesperson that's like at the kiosk in the mall, that's like flying the helicopter towards them. And they don't realize that sales is something so different. And so they go from that mindset to, I can go sell like enterprise solutions to businesses, and I can make a lot of money, and I can help people, and I'm actually good at this thing. So a lot of students realize they're good. And I had one student, he won the competition. He was my student, and he actually got a job offer on the spot. And I thought, this is a terrible idea. But that student now is making $800,000.
That's amazing.
So then I'm like, well, wait a minute here.
and doesn't have any student loan issues.
Someone needs to send me on a trip to Italy with my family.
That's good. Well, you hear a lot in the news and just a lot of discussion. And I have 2 daughters that are not Gen Z, they're millennials, but just barely. And it's tough. I mean, it's tough finding jobs after college or instead of college in some cases these days. So, whether it's in sales or not, it's a tough environment, or it seems like it. So Pete, you chose to sponsor this event, and what do you see as a unique opportunity really for Gen Z to succeed in sales? Like, how do they get there?
So my premise is that they bring something to the table that previous generations of sellers don't, which is that they are AI native. And so they are especially the way that the sales industry is evolving, where more and more commodity like sales are just going to be automated in some way, shape, or form. And so the only thing left is going to be these complex enterprise solution oriented sales where there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of information you have to deal with. And that's exactly where AI can help. And if you're in a generation that's reluctant to use it, or I already do things this way, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And my point to the Gen Z guys that I talk to is just, your point should be, Mr. Hiring Organization, you don't need any more of that type of seller. You need AI native sellers to be brought in. And by the way, we're cheaper than these guys with a lot of experience, but what we've got is expertise in how to leverage AI so that we can operate more like a senior person right out of the gate, because we are sort of taking I look at AI as sort of a collective expertise approach to the world, as opposed to traditionally, when I got hired at NCR out of college, they put me in a school for 6 months before they would let me talk to the first customer. And even then, they sent somebody out with me for 6 more months. So they were very concerned about the quality of the interactions that you had. And the last couple of jobs I had before I started SpotLogic, if there was a week of training, I wasn't allowed to go to it until I'd already been in the field for 3 months, because they needed me selling stuff, right? So the time is the biggest factor here, where we've got to find a solution where, training is so essential, but if you're only going to give me a week to do it, and now I'm starting at the more complex type of sale, you're just setting me up to fail. So I think this is an opportunity where Gen Z would really get what SpotLogic is trying to do, and I think it would really help them not only succeed in a job, but I think it would help them position themselves to get the job, because they can again take this differentiated position of, I'm an AI native seller, and here's what I can do for you.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to stand out, right? And Stephanie, I know you said the story about one person actually getting a job at the competition, but most of the time you're submitting a bunch of resumes, and frankly, now AI is evaluating those resumes for keywords, and maybe you get through that colander and maybe you don't. But how does this help students learn how to stand out?
Well, they have to learn how to communicate their own value at the event. One thing that I see that people struggle with, especially this generation, but I mean, many people struggle with this, is just being able to speak about themselves objectively. They can't see that perspective. And they also just don't know how to ask the right kinds of questions in order to get a conversation going. Often students, and I've been seeing this for over 20 years, if they're put in a situation where they're trying to stand out or get a job, then they just start talking the whole time. And they don't understand that they have to ask better questions and engage so that the person actually remembers them, rather than just, speaking for a certain amount of time. But when you're at the sales competition, you actually get to be in the room with the students, and you can see, how are they handling objections? How are they performing under pressure? How do they ask these questions, right? And so it helps them. They're in a situation where they're given a problem, and then they have to be able to solve that problem. So anyone that's judging or anyone that's watching those videos later can see, okay, when you're under pressure, how do you perform? And then at the end, they're given feedback. And so now all these people can also see, how well do you handle feedback? How coachable are you? Are you someone that I want on my team, or am I going to give you feedback and then you're going to argue with me that you were doing the things that I, mentioned to you? So you're really able to stand out in that way, because you're actually, using the same kinds of skills that you would be using on the job. Whereas if you go to a typical career fair, an employer might get like 300 resumes, hear the same story about someone basically reading the resume, right? Like, tell me about yourself. Well, I'm studying this. I'm this year. I want to, go into this field, and I'm looking for an internship or a job. It's the same thing. And so you're not memorable at all, and you haven't really showcased your skills. Plus, you can use AI to make your resume look great, or any of the applications. But it's that really, how do you perform? Like, how are you in person? And I think that's why we get so many companies that come here and they want to hire the students, because they have proven skills. And it certainly does make them stand out. What I see across the board is that sellers coming out of school are not having a hard time getting a job if they've been trained well. So if they can ask the right questions, if they can communicate, have a great conversation, they're getting hired quickly and they're getting promoted quickly. But we also have AI tools that we're using in the classroom that show how their performance is improving over time. And now I think with this new opportunity with SpotLogic, they're just going to be unstoppable.
I mean, Pete mentioned, sorry, Jody,
No, go ahead.
Pete mentioned AI skills and AI native, which, obviously I spent a lot of time researching AI and agentic AI too. But do you think companies are at the point now where they do actually evaluate AI skills when they're talking to Gen Z sellers? And does this really help make a difference for them?
They want AI skills. And what we're seeing is a lot of those entry-level positions are shrinking. And so now there's an expectation that you are going to be prepared to go into a quota carrying role. Instead of hiring 20 SDRs or BDRs, they might hire 3 that have AI skills. And we're seeing different areas starting to recruit more of our students too. But they know that they want it, but most people don't understand AI. They don't know what good output is. They don't know how to evaluate it, but they do know that it's very important. So being able to use AI is going to help them. I think the one thing that's kind of scary is that my students, their job is to learn. Their job is to learn about AI and learn about sales. I've integrated that into my class. I teach AI and sales to professionals in sales. And so the students are getting that. But I think it's really scary for professionals because you have to do your job. Your job is your job. But now, in addition to that, now you're supposed to try to learn AI skills on top of everything else. Without having a roadmap or knowing what works, and so many experts saying that they know what they're talking about when they don't. So I think it's going to be tough to navigate.
I do have a follow-up question to that, but I just wanted to circle back when you were talking about the experience that the students are getting as they're going through this. What jumped out to me is this could almost or should be a core curriculum at the schools, right? Because everyone can benefit from understanding how to engage, how to have a conversation. I mean, it goes beyond selling, right? I mean, you're teaching something that is fundamental that everyone should know how to do. But that was just my little plug for.
No, I mean, basic communication, right? It's not easy. Basic communication skills are something that you learn, not that you're born innately with. Well, I guess some people are, but.
And that ability to read the room and to read the person and respond is missing today. It is just, it's not there. I'm sorry, what were you going to say, Pete?
Well, there was actually an article in Forbes a couple weeks ago called the Gen Z Stare. And it's like this phenomenon where they don't know how to have a conversation because, COVID had a huge impact on kids where they're just locked away for, weeks on end and so on. And to me, this generation has a real opportunity because of AI, but they also have less skills going into it because they just haven't, they've been basically more in the basement, on video games as opposed to out playing ball or whatever. And so that their skills for interacting with people have more to do with like what you can say over social media, and so, so all of that's very truncated, as opposed to phone conversations. Nobody has phone conversations anymore, right? So but in sales, you can't just text back and forth with somebody and sell something complicated, right? So there's a challenge there.
So Pete, I'm curious because you've been in sales your whole career and you're a phenomenal salesperson. How do the lessons learned in the sales competition like NIST translate into real world jobs?
Well, when Stephanie was talking about this a minute ago, what popped into my head was the number of at bats that you get, right? So if you're playing baseball, my kids play baseball, you don't just walk up to the plate and you can hit the ball. There's a lot of mechanics, and you have to see pitch after pitch after pitch after pitch after pitch, and you finally get better and better at it, and you've got to tweak some of the things you're doing fundamentally wrong, and you've got it. So the mechanics have to be just right, and you have to learn. And so, Stephanie is like, we never had classes in college when I went to college. So it's a great thing that universities are starting to have that curriculum or have started. and Stephanie's just doing the next thing to amplify that. And that's kind of what SpotLogic is trying to do. Okay, we're going to take this to the next level and make it sort of a real-time, platform to help you do what you learned in training. But since you can't have 6 months of training anymore out in the field working for the company in the context where you've got to excel at that job, you can take that stuff that you need to know, put it into SpotLogic, and then it's there in your hip pocket whenever you need it. So I just see that we're sort of, trying to replicate the quality and the depth of the training that was possible in the 80s, back in the days of IBM and NCR and Xerox and all that, where they would really invest in salespeople before they sent them out in the field. We've got to use technology to try and get back to that level of skill. So I just think that essentially whatever Stephanie is teaching these guys can be instantiated in an app like SpotLogic, and they can take it with them as opposed to just trying to retain it, up in the brain cells with all the other stuff that they've got to retain in college. It's daunting.
Stephanie, what has the feedback been from the students going through the competition? What do they say after the competition ends in terms of what they've learned and how it might be different from the classroom?
Well, this is interesting. I just want to speak on Pete's point is that, we just don't have access to as much training as we need. And sometimes I hear students come back to my class, or they call me or they email me, and they say, Dr. Boyer, can I come to your class and just sit in it? Because I want to have a refresher. I feel like I'm not getting supported, or, I'm forgetting some of the things. And a lot of things that we teach are just these foundational skills that are so important that, I go out and I do training and I see that people that have been in sales for 25 years are still messing up these little challenges. And so I love this tool because it's, extending some of these elements, right? And it's almost like just like this teammate that's there with you all the time to just reinforce what's so important is just being able to maybe ask some of the right questions. Mm-hmm. But when I see students coming out of the competition, it's my favorite when they come out of the first round of the competition because they are scared to death going in and they're like having heart palpitations. We hold them in a room before they're allowed to come in, and we march them down the hallway, 15 people, and they're holding room 1, 2, 3, all the way to 15. And then we have them stand in front of the door. They have all their things. And it's like, I feel like they're almost shaking. So they're so nervous about it. And then as soon as they come out, they're just saying things like, I feel like $1 million, right? Because they usually did pretty well. But then they get some coaching too. So they're very excited to go into sales. They've mastered the process of selling, and they're so confident when they're done with it, right? Because they're like, they've done this thing that is really, really scary. And so sometimes I even hear people come back and they're like, selling to customers is so much easier than selling in that competition where I'm getting recorded and everyone's giving me feedback at the end, because sometimes you have a CEO or like a CRO or a VP of sales is in the room giving you feedback, and you're just 21, 22-year-old, almost like a child. It's very scary, but they feel so excited about the opportunity. And I think Pete's right. They don't have the time to learn. They don't gain the training. So often they're just kind of like plopped into a role, and then they're expected to figure it out. And we're seeing that, sometimes these people are not ready. They're not ramped up until like 12 or 18 months into the job. And so think about all the resources that those companies are putting into these people and all the conversations they're going out into, and they're practicing on the customer, and they're not doing a great job. So we do need tools like this that are going to help people to just be better when they're not given the right training, they're not given the right support. There's like a revolving door of leadership and managers that are coming in. And so having that consistency of like, the voice of reason and like coaching and care is so important. And what we're seeing now is I do a lot of research on support and learning and performance. And so we understand that if someone is in the organization and they feel like they have the tools to succeed, they're feeling like they're supported, then they're more motivated, they're higher performers, but they're also less likely to leave the organization. And they're happier to be there as well. So I think what we're going to see into the future is, relying on tools like this that are simple enough to use, and then they add a lot of value, like a little bit of time to use, but then what you get is a big result. I think we're going to start to see that in the future, not just a general AI that everybody can use, but specialized tools that move the needle for companies.
I wrote a little paper on LinkedIn, one of my little chicken articles, and it was about the most expensive thing to a company is hiring a salesperson who churns in the first year. There's no way to blow more money, both in terms of lost revenue and money that you're paying to have this person on board, plus the impact it would have on any of your potential customers and pipeline, and like the list goes on. And companies cannot afford to let their new hires churn. It's just there's no business model there.
So Pete, I'm curious now that you're seeing both sides of this, right? So you're in sales, you have a career and experience on that side. You are the sponsor of the event, so you're understanding the technology play. If you can go back early in your career when you started, say, 5 years ago, what do you wish you had that today's students get from this competition?
Well, one of the really cool things about the last, 10 years or whatever it's been, has been the growth of games. So whether it's strategy games like Civilization or like battle royale types like Fortnite, there's so many similarities between those games and complex sales. We could do 3 different podcasts just on that. It's so cool. And so one of the things that I think is most important, and nobody ever talks about it, is so I could if I was going to write a book on sales, I could get it down to one sentence, which is, it's very difficult to win a deal as an outsider looking in. So you've got to achieve this insider status, because if you don't have it, you're not the one that they're going to select. So buyers buy from people who understand their needs the best. So if you've got management that's telling you you've got to get your activity up, that's the wrong. Go do more superficial meetings. No, that's the opposite of what you need to be doing. So and the link back to the game, Fortnite is a great example, is the storm is always shrinking. So it's eliminating, just like Stephanie's contest, we're eliminating people. Like the buyer doesn't have time to deal with 4 or 5 or 6 sellers. They're trying to figure out as fast as they can who they really want to deal with. And the way that you're going to demonstrate that you're the person that they ought to engage in the conversation is by learning about them faster than the other people that you're competing against. So you can't see these other people and how many meetings they're having, but it's a race. It is a race to get to that insider status. And that's something I didn't understand, back in the day, that I certainly do now. They are trying to get you out of the door. And because at the end of the day, they're not buying a product, they're buying a relationship with a company that can help them succeed. And that's a whole lot more than a product, and that requires a depth of understanding that can translate into the implementation of whatever it is you're selling.
I mean, so Stephanie, a couple of things I heard you say about the competition I thought were really interesting, because it kind of plays into this idea of I'm new at this, I don't have any experience, right? But you're talking about simulating a way for them to get experience and confidence, which they don't have coming directly out of college, right? But how do does AI play into this? I mean, you sort of talked about it as an assistant or an advisor. I mean, is that how you see SpotLogic really play into this? Like, this is my co-pilot. I hate that term, but but anyway, my
Your
assistant,
teammate, yeah, your buddy.
teammate. I like teammate.
So, what I've seen with AI is, Gen AI, right? Like everybody's using Gen AI, everyone's using ChatGPT or Claude or like whatever it is, right? And everyone thinks that they're good at it because they've been using it a lot. Yeah. But they're terrible at it. They don't know how to talk to AI. So when you ask AI a question, it wants to give you a result because it wants to make you happy and it wants to give you a fast result. And it's looking at like all the information that's built on. And so people are getting terrible feedback and advice because they don't know what good looks like. They don't have any expertise, nothing. Mm-hmm. And so they're out there using these tools and then they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I just did this thing. And I can send out an email of what I just, I could ask this question based on what it told me to ask because they have no idea what they're doing. And I think that's really dangerous because they don't even know that it's so bad. And that's a whole other area. But when you have a tool like this that is built on the right foundation, it's built on the right kind of structure, and it's giving you accurate results that you can rely on, I think that's what makes it so special. And so I think we have to like lean into that, even though so many people are using all these, different large language models and programs. They need to learn how to talk to AI, but they also need to find the tools that are the right tools for the job. So
yeah, I mean, it seems like, you're saying it really helps. It provides the context that wouldn't be there if you just, ask an answer machine for an answer. That's one thing. But if you provide the right context, there's much more likely you're going to get the right answer. And then almost like I don't want to use a guided path, but a path that you can use as you're walking through this, especially until you have that experience and confidence.
Exactly. Right? And so even if you don't know, even if you're a novice just starting out, or maybe you're like going into a new industry or, talking like now you have a new ICP or something, to be able to go in and then have the confidence that even if you don't feel as confident, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. But if you can ask the right question and it's targeted, it can kind of masquerade that you know what you're doing. And then you're going to start to get good results. You're going to get the right information. So you're going to be able to learn much faster about what your customer wants and what your customer needs and what's happening with them if you're asking those right questions. And so a tool like this is going to allow you to do something like ask the right kind of questions, even if you don't necessarily know what that is because you don't have 5 years of experience yet.
And I think that's the perfect segue into my question that I had for you, Pete, because I realized as we started this discussion, we went right in, right? We're talking about the competition and we're talking about what is going on in the world of sales and Gen Z. And we skipped right over talking about and putting that baseline for what SpotLogic is as it relates to the competition and the capabilities that it brings or gives to people as they're shaping their skill set. So could you walk us through a little bit about what SpotLogic is and probably more importantly for those listening to this podcast, how can it help them leapfrog that learning curve and eliminate that 6 to 9 month learning curve so they can dive right in after they come out of the competition?
So I built SpotLogic for myself as a salesperson years ago, and because I couldn't manage the complexity of every time I change context, it's a different set of questions I have to ask. It's just the combinatorics of this product or this use case or this industry, this buyer persona. You don't talk to the CFO anything like you talk to the end user, and you don't talk. The end user has got very little to do with the manager of the end user. So the first thing you have to appreciate is that if you are trying to understand the customer, the complexity of doing that is significant, and human beings are not well equipped to manage that many variables. Computers are, right? And so that's the first thing. The second thing, which ties back into the whole gaming concept, is that most of these games have a map. So it's not just they're not giving you a path, they're giving you a map. And it says, and so in the world of SpotLogic, it's here are all of the things that you need to understand, and here are the questions that you need to ask to understand those things to be successful in this environment. So you can imagine every opportunity might have a different map that's optimized for that set of variables. So, the number of years it would take you to learn this, is tens and 15s of years, as opposed to day one, I'm being handed this tool that has these scenarios in it, and I just pick the map that I need for this situation. And if I learn something that says, wait a minute, I'm in this other situation, I just swap out and get the map for that. So it gives you this sense of confidence and ability to execute, just like Stephanie was saying. Like you don't have to know everything about the product. In fact, the customer probably already knows more about the product. What you have to do is understand how it is the customer thinks that they know what they need. And if you have these questions that help you ferret that out, then you're going to have a huge advantage over somebody who isn't asking the right questions, is talking about themselves, talking about the product. Nobody's going to give you a second meeting if that's what you're doing, let alone the 5th or 8th and 10th meeting that you're going to need to get to actually get a deal.
Stephanie, I'm curious, when you're going through the competition, I'm assuming, right, you have the fundamentals of sales, and you teach them how to use AI as their assistant, a tool, something that's going to get them further along. SpotLogic comes into play here, and the individual begins to really understand how technology can further. How does this idea of, what Pete said with the gaming, the competition side, and the personality coming through from the individual? I mean, when you're going through the competition, how much does that come into play? And how do the students learn that, right? Because it's very hard to learn how to have that, they used to call it the X factor, right? That ability to be able to communicate and spin on a dime and take what you're hearing and turn it into a conversation. Like, how does all of that come into play in the competition and leveraging that tool, right? Because you're further down that path in those questions.
Sure. Yeah, before, we used to see a lot of employers that were hiring based on personality, hiring how long can I make eye contact with you before I need to look away, those types of things. But now they're hiring based on how well they navigate that sales process. And in the competition, you're actually seeing how well they're scoring and performing in each part of the sales process. That being said, we have another element on that judging sheet that is asking them for like 5% of something else, because there is that X factor. There is that thing that seems to differentiate that we haven't necessarily quantified. Could be an element of like adaptability, something quickly that they were able to say on the spot to ease the tensions. So I think, we have some of that is baked into this, but, there used to be this whole idea of like people that are extroverted make the best salespeople. Right. But then that's not really the case. If you're introverted, you can be a very good salesperson. You're a better listener. And so I think there's different skills that people are bringing to the table. Mm-hmm. We know that often women have a higher level of empathy than men coming in, but their confidence is lower. But when you have practice and you have tools like this that give you that confidence to know that you're on the right path, you're doing the right thing, then all of that goes out of the window. I think if you can like lean in with some of the personality elements, that helps you differentiate between yourself and AI, and to be able to really connect. So I think that's what we're looking for, is people that can ask thoughtful questions. When they're getting the responses, they're actively listening, they're taking that information, and then they're drilling down to understand what's really important. And then they take that information and they use it when they're talking about the solution that they have. So we're seeing the students really helping to focus on what's important instead of just like trying to sell everything, right? And so personality, there's a little bit of an element there, but mostly it's just dealing with the process and navigating that.
Friend, I talked a little bit about the fact that buyers don't buy the way sellers sell, or sellers don't sell the way buyers buy, whichever way you want to say it, I guess. But part of that was really internet access and, search access and ability to get to all this information that wasn't really available before you had the internet. So AI changes that even more, right? I mean, now I have Perplexity and Claude, a bunch of tools that I can go to. And if I know how to ask the right questions, I can get all sorts of interesting information about how to solve my problem and what tools are better than others and that sort of thing. So buyers are AI native too. So how do you think that plays out, and how does that change the sales process if you had sellers that are AI native and buyers that are AI native? I mean, does this change the process?
Who are you asking?
Both of you, but Pete, you can start.
Okay. Well, I'll just loop back to, you brought up the 68% number, which is an existential threat to salespeople.
Yep.
They're being avoided by buyers because they don't add value, right? There's a more convenient way to learn information, but that's not what is the sum total of what needs to be done to make a purchase decision. You need to interact with other buyers. You need to coalesce on what we feel is the right approach to these different variables that are all part of this solution. But like, I just did this with GPT a couple of weeks ago, and it blew my mind how effective it was. I basically said, I'm a salesperson who's being brought in at the very last part of a sale, and essentially, how do I ask questions that would convince the customer to allow me to help him figure out whether he's made all the right assumptions or if he's missing anything, if there's gaps. And it gave me sort of a 4-step process with some number of questions for each one. And it was better than I could have come up with after 30-something years of experience. And so I just plopped that into SpotLogic, and it's a new map that you can use for every time this comes up. And you don't, it keeps you from giving a price to somebody who just wants a price and who's not willing to actually partner with you. And it gets you focused on having a really high quality conversation with somebody who is willing to partner with you. But, and if I had just gone in and tried to pitch a product, that I would have been wasting my time and the customer. So there's this symbiosis between, the problem is with GPT, you ask it what time it is, it tells you how to build a watch sometimes. And I just needed, pieces of this strategy that it's recommending and make that into the real-time system that SpotLogic is. So it's GPT is not enough to solve the sales problem, but it's an excellent resource.
That actually, you kind of started leading into where my next question and the question that we're probably going to round out, because I see we're coming up against time. But with ChatGPT, right, as I'm sitting here and listening to all this, I'm sure we have some viewers who are going to question and go, well, wait a minute. What value does SpotLogic bring that I cannot get from something like a ChatGPT or a Claude? Why SpotLogic?
So the centerpiece of SpotLogic is this thing that I call an information position. And basically, it's an information model that shows you the entire deal, what you know, what you don't know, where there are objections, so that 100% of deals that are lost are because of missing information. Oh, I didn't know about that buyer. I didn't know about this requirement. I didn't know about this. I didn't know about that. And same thing with poor forecasting. Same thing. I'm missing information, and so my forecast is wrong. And so it's all about getting to this critical mass of understanding. And so SpotLogic is sort of that UI that collects whatever it is you learn from the customer, what GPT has, it puts it all in one space. And the enterprise version of our product will let multiple people work on that same map. So now you've got this collective understanding of this particular customer's problem, and even the customer could participate on that version, and they can be adding new nodes to this this information model, and it just brings a level of clarity to unstructured data. It makes it structured, and it makes it obvious where we're at. So, and that's the map. So I can see exactly where I'm at risk in a second, and it points me directly to what I need to learn now. And so I could get out of a meeting and go, oh, there's still 3 things I don't know about this. Let me send an email and ask 2 of these 3 questions. And then when he responds, maybe I'll ask him 1 more, and then I'll have completely, satisfied everything I need to learn. And the other value of the map is that because GPT and the internet itself has more information than I could ever deal with, the map, the information position, basically defines what you don't need to think about. So there's if it's not in there, it's noise, it's not signal. But for another type of deal that requires another map, it might be signal for that type of deal, right? And so that's where this collective expertise can really help a new salesperson, execute like a far more seasoned one, because it's bringing that along with them.
I love that. And as you're talking, Stephanie, I think it would be amazing at the end of this competition, if you're open and the student is open, we should look at bringing the winner or the semifinalists on an episode to talk about their experience and what they've learned and how the tool helped them. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
I think it would make it a great episode.
Yeah, and actually,
even better, why don't you just come in person and scoop them up into a room?
Right? I love it.
And while we're analyzing the data for the results, take some of those finalists and hear what they have to say about what do they learn. They're probably going to be exhausted, but it's going to be very fresh, and we have plenty of space for you to turn one of our spaces into a podcast studio.
Yeah. We're going to follow up with you offline on that, Stephanie.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
You can talk to the coaches, the faculty, the student. Like, you can talk to the companies that are there. So many opportunities.
Love it
to learn.
So Stephanie, we are getting close to the end of time for this session. So I just wanted to kind of wrap things up in a combination of 2 questions, really. One is, how do you see this type of tool changing the way you teach people how to sell? And then the second piece of that is, and if you could turn this around and talk to Gen Z students that are thinking about sales, what kind of advice would you give them?
Okay. So advice and that. So a tool like this is important. We are teaching the process. We're teaching it case-based. And so now they've learned a pretty strong process. They're practicing a lot and they're getting confidence. But when they go out into the world and they're in a new situation, they may struggle to apply all of these things that they learned, or even remember all of them, because we forget things over time. So I think a tool like this that is simple to use, something that you put a little bit of effort in, not much, and you get a big result, that is what our sellers are going to need to succeed, whether they're new or, a little bit more seasoned. I think a tool like this can really help. Now, I would say, like, anybody that's thinking about going into sales, go for it. It's a lucrative career. You can help people. It's incredible. You can have security and freedom. And I would say 2 things is you need to learn how to talk to AI and build these foundational skills. Like, you can't just be great at AI and not know anything, because you don't know if what you're getting is actually good or not. So it's like that learning element of it, talk to AI and understand what you're talking about, foundational skills. But then also you have to practice. You have to practice a lot more than you think to turn what you're learning into a skill and a habit that you can continue on. And you can't just learn it and think you know it. You have to continue to practice throughout your entire career, because that's what's going to make you an excellent seller.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, so Stephanie and Pete, we're definitely at the end of time for this recording, but definitely fun session and lots of information here. So that's great. But so thank you both for joining. And if you think you have what it takes to be in the hot seat, let us know. We'd love to get you on the show and have some fun, have a good discussion. So I'm Michael Fawcett.
And I'm Jody Spencer. Tune in next time for some different faces, different topics, and different perspectives as we put someone new in the hot seat. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.